Hi friends, Happy New Year, Happy 2024. How crazy is that? I hope you all had a great holiday season, whether in celebration or just going through the usual motions of life if you don't celebrate. If you noticed, I took a break from releasing an episode last week Friday because I was in full-on vacation mode. I actually flew to California to visit my family to celebrate Christmas. It was with my dad's side of the family. My uncle, his wife, and my cousin Kyle, who most of you have grown to know online over the past few years on my Instagram. This Christmas is actually super and extra special and memorable for me because this is actually the very first time I ever celebrate the holidays with them, or any of my father's family in fact. I don't really share much about my family online for privacy, but I guess over the past few years, I have becoming more open about this. A holiday story incoming. I actually never met my father, for those who don't know. In fact, I didn't know anything about him until around 5 or 6 years ago, very recently. I didn't know his name, how he looks like, anything. I won't get into the details in this episode intro, maybe in a future episode or video, but in summary, I grew up with my single mom, an amazing woman truly, but I definitely always wondered about my father and his family. The reason why I grew up not knowing anything is something that I will also allocate for that future explanation video. Anyways, I remember being 8 years old one day in the cathedral with my mother and grandmother during the Christmas Advent season, praying that someday I could also spend the holidays with my dad or his family side too. During that moment, I knew it was an impossible prayer. But look where we are now. Almost 20 years later, it finally happened and I couldn't be ever more grateful. Yes, due to serendipitous events, I was able to connect with my dad's side. Though I never got to meet my dad because he actually passed a year before this, I finally met his brother and his family in 2019 in California. And my wish as an 8-year-old finally came true. Now, why did I have to go on this whole Christmas journey besides just wanting to tell my story? Well, on Christmas Day, we actually drove to Las Vegas for a few days to celebrate. We met my cousin Kyle's childhood friend who happened to be both a contemporary dancer and a massage therapist. Now, if you have been following the podcast for a while, you might notice that most of our expert guests are exactly in this same regard and story, providing service and care to others, whether clinical or scientific, and also living other lives. We met a rock star turned anesthesiologist in season 1, physical medicine doctor, and also a dancing heartthrob online in the same lifetime, a real housewife of Dallas, and a physician, and we can go on. Our episode today is a continuation of these Hannah Montana-like best of both worlds stories, a badass healthcare worker and a star on the side. I have the greatest honor of sitting down in this episode with an actual icon who I genuinely am a huge fan of. I still can't believe that I actually got to sit down and have this episode with her. I'm talking about Dr. Kathryn Ko. She's a board-certified neurosurgeon, ambidextrous at that, with over 3 decades of service, having been the Chief of Neurosurgery for over 20 years of this. In fact, she invented the patent for a method of performing decompressive craniectomy through a bone flap removal from a cranium back in 2007. In 1998, she authored the Survival Bible for Women in Medicine. But beyond this, beyond the medicine, she's a multimedia artist, having attained a Master's of Fine Arts in Painting. She's a senior curator at the American Medical Women's Association, creator of art space and blog post Neurosurgery Le Freak, and artist and writer for the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, the Neurosurgeon Studio, with her work and story being featured on New York Times. What an honor. A neurosurgeon and an artist? Nothing can get better than that. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you have a great rest of the day and a happy new year. I hope this one is as marvelous and as great and as amazing and as fulfilling for you as it would be for me. Let's manifest it. Hi, Doc.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Well, thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh my gosh, it's such an honor. Are you in New York?
No, I'm actually in somewhere in the Pacific Ocean.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I escaped a nor'easter, luckily.
Yeah, we had some snow yesterday, so I'm so jealous. Well, again, thank you so much for being with me tonight. I am such a huge fan of your work and of your story and everything that you do. So thank you so much for joining me on my platform. If you could first please introduce yourself to everybody.
Okay, hi. I'm Doc Ambidextrous, or Kathryn Ko, and I'm an ordinary brain surgeon. And I also do art, and I'm originally from Honolulu. I went to medical school in the University of Hawaiʻi, and then I did my neurosurgery residency at Mount Sinai, and I did a fellowship at the University of Washington in cerebrovascular surgery and research. And then when my career, about mid-career, I decided to get a Master's of Fine Art in painting with an emphasis on medical themes. And so that's really, I kind of combined both careers now. I don't really see much of a difference between the brush and the scalpel. Yeah. It's sort of the same. And also, I'm biracial. Yeah. And so I'm so old that I was biracial before the term came up. Yes, I'm actually Korean and Irish. And so that's kind of an important theme for me also, in knowing intimately two different cultures, having two different perspectives on things, and utilizing them in my journey to the best of my ability. So yeah, that's how I got to. And then when I did my residency at Mount Sinai in New York City, I decided to stay. And partly I stayed because I had a really good job offer. I started working for Cornell, Department of Neurosurgery at Cornell University. I did that for a couple of years. And so I stayed in New York, but I also then decided, you know what, it's a really good art scene. Yeah. And I sort of had a kernel of an idea that I might want to go do something in the arts. And so I sort of, stuck around. It turned out to be a pretty good idea. Yeah. Although working in New York City is very competitive, as you know, Chris. It's I'm glad that I did that, and now I'm sort of, my career is sort of 30 years now, and so it might soon be time to turn the page and do something new. We'll see. Yeah.
I mean, Doc, there's nothing ordinary about you. I mean, I look up to you so greatly. I wanted to ask, though, where did that inspiration for medicine come from? Was it like a family member, a friend, a personal experience?
Well, my mother had polio, and I wrote about it in this story called The Wound Whisperer, because my mother got polio just before the vaccine came out. And so my whole life was sort of geared toward disability, because when you're a child and your mother has difficulty moving and falls and things like that, you're very aware. I don't know if that's the inspiration. I always loved science too, though. So I was going to do something in science no matter what it was, whether it was, I graduated in zoology. So I was initially interested in animal medicine, and God bless the veterinarians. I admire them so much, but I migrated over to the human side about my third year of college. And then, but I did graduate in zoology. So technically speaking, I could work at a zoo. Yeah.
Just to work with different types of animals, right? Wow.
Right. Yeah. Second career, right?
Yeah. I mean, my inspiration for healthcare also came from my mom, not because of a disease aspect, but she was a nurse. She actually just retired. She's been a nurse for 30 years. So also ever since a kid, I was like, I think I want to do something within taking care of people as well. Yeah.
So I saw that post about your mother and that she had recently retired, and, give her a hug for me, because the nursing staff and the physician assistant staff and everybody down to even the people that clean the OR. I mean, the work they do, and, sometimes they don't get that acknowledged. But some of my favorite people, I remember when I first started, I came from Honolulu and I ended up at Coney Island Hospital. That's where I did my internship in Brooklyn. And I remember the first person who was kind to me was the janitor. And she just, she was amazing. And I never forgot her. And she was cleaning. And she was the one that looked up and she said, having a hard night. And I said, yeah. And she was encouraging. So everybody, the healthcare, anybody in the hospital, sometimes you have to just sit and wonder and thank them for what they do. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I worked throughout the whole COVID-19, like the epicenter in 2020 in New York, and you know how hard like New York City was hit in, it was March, April of 2020.
Yeah.
And I mean, just also props to, we always say, me and my coworkers, like the janitors, the environmental staff who would go in and clean the rooms, and we had no idea what was going on in the air, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that COVID period in New York City was, we're still thinking about how to recover from it, both physically and also emotionally. It was it's such an incredible experience,
Yeah, and I've seen how much of a toll it's brought on so many healthcare workers, especially physicians as well. But I feel like the life of a physician is a life of many tolls, right? I mean, it's just such a long and arduous road from school and training and exams. And I feel like the education, learning never stops, especially for you in neurosurgery. I guess it's a very standardized thing where there's like so much sacrifices, right? A lot of things that you have to give up, potential money that you have to give up with student loans, or the years that you're in residency and you're incurring, interest to any loans that you've gotten, missed parties, missed family occasions. Do you have any regrets going through it all now that you have been practicing?
No, I'm glad I did it. I wish the system would change though, so that number one, the medical students wouldn't have that huge financial burden on their backs when they get out, because it's really stressful to have to own 6 figures, I didn't come from I paid for my own school. I went to public school all the way, and I took loans and everything like that. My family could not give anything, and so I know how it feels. Of course, during my time, the rates were much lower. But that's one thing. I wish the system would change. And I wish, it's such a long process. For me, it was 16 years before I could, hang out my shingle. And so, you miss a lot of your growing up. And so when you're in the hospital day in, day out, and in the operating room day in, day out, sometimes your emotional maturity doesn't keep up with your peers who are, outside doing other jobs, 9 to 5, no weekends. And so I think that's I think if I hadn't gone into art, which showed me a different way of thinking and looking at the world. Maybe I would have some regrets, or I would have missed something. But I think, art really saved me. And because it made me see something in the quiet of my studio. There's something about being in a studio when you're painting, maybe some idea that you've operated on, some concept, some narrative that gives you insight and profound thought that, in the hospital, when you're moving and you're walking around and a patient is crashing, you're focused on trying to fix the problem. But in the art studio, you can focus on what you've been through, what that family's been through, what the patient is going through. And it gives you a deeper sense of responsibility and gratitude that you've chosen this field. Because the gratitude can get lost when you're tired, when you're under stress, and you forget why you're in the field. So, being an artist, I think really, really helped me. And I'm just glad I did it. I didn't know I was an artist until late in my career, very late. One of the things too is you're surprising that things may bubble up in your life that surprise you, that you never knew you had inside of you, until one day you wake up and you just say, this is who I am. This is really who I am. And I think people would be shocked if they knew me in medical school to find out I was an artist,
Yeah. I mean, I think your art too, like the things that you paint, it's very intentional. And, as I have read a lot of your excerpts in your book, I noticed how very intentional you are with everything that you have done, Doc. I mean, you even wrote a book called The Survival Bible for Women in Medicine, I think in 1998. And, I think that's emanating from your pictures, again, being intentional, to writing a book like this, like a survival guide. I wanted to know, what was your experiences as a woman in medicine, either in school or in training, that led you to write a book like that?
Well, the Survival Bible for Women in Medicine. This is how long ago it was written. I wrote it. Okay. No, they didn't have this. So I finished residency in 1991, and I actually wrote the book really quick. I wrote it like in 92, 93, but it took some time to get published. And because it was one of the first books by a woman in medicine for women in medicine. And it's not just doctors, it's all women who are, physician assistants, nurses, things like that. It's all women in medicine. But it is geared toward the residency doctors thing. And I didn't have women around me in residency. And the ones that I did, we were kind of isolated. And so it was kind of like my love note, something I just wanted to give the women that I couldn't directly touch or communicate with, because in neurosurgery at that time, very isolated. So I literally handwrote it, and it got published. And it's so long ago now, but I finally converted it into a Microsoft Word document. So I'm going to update it, and it's probably going to be called either Daughter of Survival Bible, like Daughter of Frankenstein, or Granddaughter. Maybe Granddaughter is more appropriate. I want to just publish it online, and then people can read it. But it'll be updated. One of the funny things in that book was I had a recipe. I was cooking during those days. I had a recipe for fried rice, and that's the Kathryn Ko fried rice recipe. But I'm a vegetarian now. I wasn't then. So that will definitely have to be
updated.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I guess from the time that you were writing that book, I can't imagine how isolating it was, especially in neurosurgery. I mean, we know the statistics when it comes to women in surgery specifically, right? And even more to subspecialties within surgery, like neurosurgery, orthopedic surgery. Are there things that you have seen throughout the years that still needs to change until now for women, especially female physicians, whether it's residents or attendings?
Yeah, I think it has. Of course, it's much better than when I went. When I went through the system, but I think having women there, having women go through the female life cycle, I think that helps the women that come afterwards, and just the fact that a female is there. Gives the predominant culture, which during my time was male, gives a predominant culture the idea that women can be there and everything that the males do. When I was there, the problem with surgery though is it's a physical thing. Yeah, of course, you have to understand everything and a lot of thinking, a lot of studying, but it's physical. And so when I was there, the tools were for men. So it's like as good as Serena Williams is, using one of the males' rackets to play ball. So that was something that I don't think any of my professors had any notion of, that, the females approach surgery, there's a size difference, there's a strength difference. Females approach surgery differently, and the tools, the hand size. And that's something that I kind of had to work through myself. And in fact, after residency, I ended up using almost none of the tools that I had been taught to use because they just didn't fit my hand well. And so it took a while. And that's some of the things when you have women around you teaching you, they have the same skill set. And I remember my best assistants during surgery when I became an attending were always women. They were like absolutely the best assistants. Of course, there was some really good male assistants, but in general, the women, there's nothing like doing surgery and having a woman colleague across the operating field from you. Such a sense of comfort. Yeah, and that's an important thing. But I hope the residencies have matured to realize that women bring another perspective to the field. And that it's definitely not going back. Yeah. So, I mean, they have no choice but to plow forward.
Ever since I was a child, my inner arms and neck would always suffer from itchiness and irritation whenever I would sweat. It can become so debilitating, forcing myself not to scratch my skin and end up with wounds from prickly heat, especially at night. Thankfully, I have found relief through by Dr. Mom's Soothing Beta Cream and Soothing Bat Treatment, which uses barley-derived beta-glucan technology to help alleviate eczema, bug bites, and dry, itchy, irritated skin. Beta-glucan is a fiber shown in scientific studies to improve skin hydration and healing, and by Dr. Mom's products extracted with a technique that uses air technology, requiring no chemicals or solvents. Created by family physician Dr. Stephanie Liu with the help of an allergist and immunologist, you can now allow your skin to breathe and heal naturally. Using the code CHRISTIAN10, that's CHRISTIAN10, you can get 10% off your first order on buydrmom.com. As a healthcare worker, my identity can become so boxed within the pressures and expectations of my profession that sometimes I forget who I really am outside the hospital walls. This is why I find so much power and liberation in self-expression through fashion and accessories, and Lupin seeks to do the same. Encouraging self-confidence and creating a safe space to be yourself, Lupin seeks to share with the world simple and impactful jewelry pieces that can bring confidence effortlessly. Meaning what goes around comes around, the brand, comprised of third-generation jewelers, holds a mission to brighten the community by promoting positivity and a growth mindset. Lupin's clean designs are handcrafted in South Korea using 925 sterling silver and can go with almost any outfit on anyone. In fact, I wear my pieces on and off shift. With the code Franz, that's FRANZ, you can get 15% off your first order on lupin.com. Let's bring more luster into the world, together with Lupin. I remember coming home every day from elementary school and smelling the newly steamed jasmine rice in the cooker that my grandmother made just in time for dinner. It reminded me of my first few years living on the farm back home in Asia, sniffing the rice while overlooking the fields. Founded in 2020, Kathryn Ko hand pours nostalgic and iconic scented soy wax candles inspired by the Asian scents, flavors, and traditions that founder Brandon Leung grew up with in his first-generation Chinese-American household. Brandon's mission with Bison is to create authentic Asian aromas while rediscovering his love of his Chinese culture and heritage. The candles and home fragrances celebrate aromatic Eastern flavors and aromas one would typically find in an Asian kitchen or pantry, like Vietnamese coffee, steamed white rice, and white peach. Enjoy traditional scents alongside some modern spin-off blends and be taken back into the beauty of the motherland with the code BISONFRANZ, that's BAISUNFRANZ, for 15% off your first order at bisoncandleco.com. I guess also throughout the years, Doc, you've probably seen so many brokenness within the healthcare system for sure, like very systemic flaws and errors. And I guess COVID has exposed a lot of those brokenness into the light, especially into the media, right? Let's say a student somewhere in the world wants to pursue medicine but is afraid of the daunting brokenness again in the system and is asking if it's still worth it to pursue medicine. With all of your experience and all that you have seen, I guess, with your patient experiences and all that, do you think it's still worth it to enter medicine in a time like this?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's one of the fields where you get paid to do good.
Mm.
So I think if you really like science and you like medicine and you have a hankering for service, you cannot beat the feeling you get from making a difference in somebody's life. Even if they don't thank you, it's still something that rises above money. It rises above almost everything. And so that part, you have to have that feeling and you have to have that desire that something like that would make your life fulfilling. It's the same thing with art. When someone looks at one of my art pieces and they get, and it somehow minusculely changes their outlook on something, it's a profound, it has deep, profound meaning for me. Medicine is like that too, in that it can really have an impact on that person's life. And so if you want to leave some kind of a trace on this earth, that is a really, really good avenue. I just wish that they would cut the time down so that people wouldn't have to go through 16 years to become a neurosurgeon. And I want the people to be more accepting of having outside lifestyles, for example, motherhood, for example, some other stuff, some other things. I think one of my messages in medicine is that you can do multiple things. Don't ever be pushed into the idea that you have to just do medicine. I remember when I was interviewing for neurosurgery years ago, I told one of the guys, I was interviewing with one of the professors, and I said, well, he said, what are you? And I said, oh, I'm very active. I'm a runner. And he goes, well, you won't run anymore. And so that attitude, well, listen, buddy, I ran. I did, So that attitude is, and he should have told me instead of saying, well, you won't run anymore. He should have said, you know what? Just go for everything you can possibly do and be a neurosurgeon. And be an artist, and be this, and be a mother, and be this, and be this. So, that's the attitude that I want in my professors and people that follow me. I want them to be inclusive of different perspectives and what anybody, the more off the rails you are, the more you bring to the profession. That thinking was never there. They used to say, you've got to all be the same. You've got to all look the same. You've got to be, the same gender, the same this, same that. No, the more different you are, the higher the program is, the higher the whole message is. So anyway, that's just one of my things. And I think that comes from being biracial, is that, you're looking at things, you kind of don't really fit in one way or the other. And you kind of watching this, watching that, and you take the best. It reminds me of the talent that Obama had by being biracial. He had a similar perspective on things that I thought was very unique.
I super agree, Doug. I mean, I think we're also seeing a new generation of doctors, right? And also other healthcare workers where it's like, I'm a doctor, but I'm also a singer, and I'm also a dancer, I'm also a this and a that, right? Like, I feel like the pool of students and the residents are becoming more diversified, not just when it comes to race and ethnicity, but we're seeing, I think here in social media, especially on TikTok, right? We see so many talented people, and before you know it, they're actually a surgeon. They're actually this and that too. So I agree with that. And one of my mentors, who's also an attending physician, she was saying how she's so excited for the next generation of physicians to come in, where brings more to the table when it comes to experiences and hobbies and other activities and stuff like that.
I think your generation, the generation that you encompass, is going to really make some amazing changes. I do think that healthcare should be free. And I don't think anybody should have to go into debt to save their life or to make their life better. And so I think that is coming, and COVID may have had a little bit to do with that. And so, so one of the things I think with COVID is that when the government wants to do something, they do it. Free tests, free vaccines, and so well organized. So I'm hopeful that by the time you reach my age, things will have really changed, so that, most of my career was done in socioeconomically challenged areas. I worked a lot at Harlem Hospital. I've also worked in the South Bronx. And it's such an incredible experience to see what people in those communities have to go through to get good health care. And I would not change that experience for any Ivy League or any highfalutin, beautiful hospital. I would rather work in those type of environments because it made me a better person. And there's no way to teach that except to do it.
I mean, I also rotated a Harlem hospital during my clinicals in nursing school, and a lot of the city hospitals here in New York too, in Woodhull and Bellevue. And I think it's in those populations and areas where you're right, Doc, you really see this fragility of the human condition, where it's like this is healthcare, this is medicine, right? This is the crux of it all. And I super agree with that. And aside from all that, I wanted to ask, why neurosurgery? What led you to this specialty as opposed to other things?
Well, basically, basically, I was an athlete my whole life.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something physical, right? That puts me in the surgical category.
Yeah.
And brain, really, it's just plain and simple. Because, one of my goals before was to try to understand the human brain. And at this point in my life, I realized that was pretty naive. And I should have tried to understand outer space. Because the brain is just like an unfolding box. You can never get to the end of it. Yeah. And we probably are at our infancy in terms of understanding the depth of complexity of the human brain. But basically, I went in because I thought I was going to go into OBGYN. And then when we did neuroanatomy, I just said, wait a minute.
There we go.
Hold on. I told myself, hold on. I think you want to study this organ. but believe me, I have the best OBGYN ever. So, one of the things I wanted to tell you is when I first decided to branch off into art, I was embarrassed to tell my colleagues that I was going into art because, I was, at that point, it was mid-career. I was chief at a hospital, a level 1 trauma hospital for neurosurgery in the Bronx. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I thought they would judge me. But once they saw my art, they actually embraced it. So sometimes, you think, you're doing something a little bit outside the mainstream and it's odd. And then, I don't know, for some reason, sometimes people just, instead of like saying, what are you doing? What are you wasting? They embrace it. And so just do whatever is in your heart and bring it to the field and don't worry about what they are going to say because probably they'll celebrate you.
Yeah, and I love also how you said that. I mean, your colleagues, once they saw your art, it's like, yes, full support. I know you said that your artistic love, came in the middle of your journey. But when you were a kid, did you ever already like Jolie that you realized?
No, I did not. I didn't start art until about 15 years ago. I was in my 40s when I really started. I was taking a few classes for some, you don't know why you do stuff. But it comes from something deep inside, like there's a little kernel. And so I said, let me sign up for this art class at the Y, right? And I missed half of them because of surgery or emergency. And I was like, I was looking at my pieces and I was saying, you're terrible. It's so bad. And I said, if you really want to sing, you've got to go to formal school. And so at that point, I made a decision. I said, I think it's giving me something. I couldn't even verbalize what comfort or solace or refuge that art was giving me. But I realized that I had, after art school, that I had something to kind of expunge onto the canvas. And then, dealing with the canvas and the narrative, it made my neurosurgery career better. Yeah, it's like really, when you think, you're going outside the lines, you're doing one thing that nobody else is doing, and it's kind of odd. No, actually, it's something you need. Yeah, and it's surprising. It comes up. So if like there's a lot of my colleagues, a few of my colleagues who said, when I retire, I'm going to go into art. And, I kind of just said, okay. But in reality, if it's burning inside of you, don't wait. Go and do it. Just somehow find a way to do a little bit of it. Because, when, like they say, I'm going to do it when I retire. When you retire, it's too late.
Yeah. I mean, also, things come up. Who imagined this pandemic to come up, right? Things are so unexpected. You're right. We should just really go for it. And you went for your MFA, right? And what led to that decision of, actually, I'm going to do, formal studies as opposed to just, I'm just going to paint as a passion?
Because I was terrible.
So that's
I was embarrassed. When I was at the Y, I would hide my canvas so no one would see. It was a disaster. So I realized it's like pre-med. I needed the pre-med classes to how does color work here? How does value work? How does composition? And it was almost a whole different language compared do neurosurgery and medicine. It took me basically 3.5 years to get through art school, and medicine was 4 years, and it was expensive too, becoming an artist. And I felt really like, from the art side, a lot of my colleagues who paint way better than I am, they're going to have a hard time finding jobs in art itself. But it was funny because here's a little funny story. So I was in the operating room one day back at my residency. I was chief resident, and one of the mean professors stood at the door and yelled, "You hold the cranial drill like a girl." And I was like thinking to myself, what, am I crappy? Why? What's wrong with my hands? Why am I, why? In your mind, it was a mean move. He meant it mean. And then I said, what the hell? What's going on? But I realized, well, how else am I supposed to hold a goddamn cranial drill? I'm a girl, How am I supposed to hold it? Like a, And so then I said to myself, it took me a few years to get over that cut, because he meant it mean. But if I had been a little bit more composed and not a resident, and he hadn't been such a high guy, I would have said to him, how do you expect me to hold it? I would have come back at him, but I didn't. I just held it inside, and it bothered me for many years. And then I went to art school, and then the art professor goes, you paint like a girl. But I had a big comeback then. That was many years ago. And I said, yeah, well, how else do you expect me to paint? So the art professor got it back, and the neurosurgeon did not.
In this world of social media that places so much physical critique and pressure on maintaining a youthful appearance against all environmental odds, the skincare and beauty industries have succumbed to a myriad of anti-aging practices. However, the covert fact is that beauty is timeless and that aging is a privilege. Regence, an inclusive wellness brand, seeks to promote this ritual of well-aging, understanding that it is connectivity with the body and attentive care given to it as it changes, including our skin. Founded by Filipino-American Gilio Riccio, Regence introduces the all-encompassing serum, created to target the concerns of maturing melanated skin by utilizing a blend of healing botanicals used by our ancestors and select clinically proven active ingredients. From the brightening Ayurvedic licorice root to the soothing Centella asiatica and hydrating green algae, welcome to the journey of fueling skin health and enhancing, not changing, your natural shade. With the code FRANZ, that's FRANZ, you can get 15% off your first order on regencewellness.com. Experience the power of mixing native wisdom with modern-day science. Do you have any guilty pleasures? I have one. Boba. Given that the average cafe-made milk tea has over 100 calories per serving, over 20 grams of high glycemic sugar, and is packed with artificial flavors, I am so glad that the guilty days are over with Twirl, the world's first canned, plant-based milk tea. With only 45 to 50 calories per serving and containing 6 to 7 grams of low glycemic sweeteners, Twirl is made with pea milk, the most sustainable plant-based milk on the market, regenerating the soil where it comes from. Fair trade and organic are the names of the game, as the teas are sourced from biodiverse family farms in China, Japan, and Taiwan that practice sustainable farming techniques. No artificial flavors are ever used. From 4 different flavors to ready-to-eat plant-based konjac and boba pearls, let's enjoy tasty, creamy, shelf-stable, and healthy milk tea together for 10% off using the code FRANZ10, that's FRANZ10, on twirlmilktea.com. Twirl around in its goodness. Growing up, I was ashamed of my Asian heritage. Classmates would comment about the lunch my grandma cooked, other kids would make fun of my eyes, and even some adults today would tell me to go back to where I came from. But where do I really belong? Who really am I? Am I not American enough? Highlighting the year of the first documented arrival of Asian Americans in North America, 1587 Sneakers seeks to shine the spotlight on Asian American stories and demonstrate to the world the extraordinary breadth of our passions and achievements. Made with full-grain natural Italian leather by footwear artisans, 100% biodegradable natural rubber outsole, calf leather interior lining for comfort and good smells, and waxed cotton laces for longer lasting cleanliness. These premium sneakers combine the highest quality, an array of timeless designs, and the movement to be authentically who you are. With the code FRANZ15, that's lowercase FRANZ15, you can get 15% off your first order on 1587sneakers.com. Step into embracing your identity without hiding. Express yourself unapologetically.
I noticed that it's as if you don't put a demarcation line between the neurosurgeon, Dr. Ko, and then the painter, Dr. Ko. It seems like it really bleeds into each other for you in your life. How does neurosurgery help your role and your work as a painter and vice versa, painter as a neurosurgeon?
Well, they bleed into each other. They literally bleed into each other. And I'm always trying to, some episode that I've had in the hospital that I want to investigate a little bit more, I will take it to the canvas. I will kind of analyze it there, see what my feelings were, try to see what the patient had felt. Although none of them are really patients, they're sort of a conglomerate of different ideas in patients. They're not really portraits of people, although some of them look like portraits. It's not nobody in particular. And I just try to see what was the tension, what was the feeling, what was the passion at that particular moment. And what I'm trying to do in my art is capture the passion of that particular moment that I felt, and try to have the lay people that are not in medicine, when they look at the art, to try to get something from it. And also to try to understand what medical professionals go through on a different level. You know, we can write about it and we can talk about it, but there's something about a visual image that will stop a person not in medicine cold if it hits them. And so that's what I'm going after. I'm going after the fact that, medicine is a whole different way of looking at life, and that we're dealing with such critical issues, and also the people want them to relate to their own experiences, some of the people that look at the art. And I think probably the artists that I went to school with were most interested in medical art, most interested in it. They found it fascinating. And so I think it does resonate beyond the medical profession, some of my pieces. And that's what I'm going through. I also do cartooning too, because I think humor is a good way to elucidate a bad experience. Instead of saying like, oh, this person said such a mean thing to me and was so mean and this and that. I think if you can make it funny, it gets your idea across without kind of being negative. Yeah, so I use a lot of my cartooning is very autobiographical. And there's a lot of different, and I try to, anyway, it's more autobiographical than my actual fine painting. So the cartooning has a lot to do with what I've gone through, but presented in a way that's kind of funny.
Yeah. My next question was going to be, as a painter, if your life was a snapshot, what would your painting look like?
Well, it would probably be a painting of the brain. I don't think I would even have a face there. It'd probably be just the brain, because I think that, I don't know, for some reason I'm obsessed with it.
I can tell.
This is a real good thing if you're a brain surgeon, right?
I would hope so. Yeah.
I mean, it would have something to do with my profound esteem and just incredible whatever it is for the brain, that being from Hawaii and just some of the things I've gone through. I think that would be really autobiographical. Plus, hoping that the women that follow me and have it easier, and that I'm grateful to the women that went before me, paving the way through that wilderness. And so, so that's kind of like what I am, interested in, is pushing, females forward.
Yeah, I'm very curious. You said earlier that there's just no limit to how much we can understand the brain, with how complex or maybe even over complex it is. Was there ever, and this might be hard to answer because there might be many different points, but was there ever a point whether either during surgery or, I don't know, post-surgical care where you were just like baffled about an aspect of the human brain that you were so surprised by?
Oh, every day.
I know.
Yeah, I don't, here's the thing that, I was working at, as I said, many level 1 trauma centers, and the intensity of the injuries and the trauma that patients have undergone, and the ability to recover from it, it is fascinating to me, even with strokes. I just think that, the traumatic injuries that I've seen and the results and people fighting to come back, it makes me admire the brain even more and realizes the power of the human brain. I don't really think we've tapped into the full power or the full potential of what the human brain is capable of doing, particularly with creativity, particularly with the idea of using creativity to solve problems instead of resulting to aggression. And so I do think that having been an artist and a neurosurgeon is that I am really confident when I have an issue in the operating room that creativity will solve it. I am totally confident. If there's anything that I'm confident in besides, my neurosurgical skills, it's creativity. And I do think that I can solve a problem creatively in a kind and truthful way. I think creativity is really the key to moving on to the next level. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I'm just in awe of everything that you have said. Yeah. I think creativity is like a boat in the middle of an ocean that you don't know the dimensions to, right? It's the fact that everyone is different from each other, like someone's creative response to a problem will be so different from a person next to me, right? And I wonder what the results of the fusion of different creativities would be in a single room in a very dire moment, which I guess you see in the OR, right? I mean, your brain is not the only brain that's working the OR, right? There's I don't know, a first assist there, or the scrub techs or the nurses. I mean, I can't imagine, like, in times of emergency, how much is like creativity is there to, maybe this is what we can do, right, Doc?
Yeah, because things come up that you didn't learn in residency. And so you have to somehow, in a split second, in neurosurgery, cardiac surgery, airway, transplant surgery, things happen that you didn't train for and you didn't expect. And you have to first of all, calm down. I mean, once you just have to lower everything has to lower, and you have to go into this thing where you don't hear anybody. You're just so focused like a laser on this situation, and you have very limited time to solve the problem. And so those things take a few years to learn and to gain confidence, but you do get it. And it's a hard thing. That's the kind of thing they don't really teach is, what to do in that type of situation, except that you hope that you have some experience or you've seen something or you come up with some idea that can solve the problem. It doesn't happen that often. It tends to happen to me in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, when you're at a hospital that may or may not have had experience with this type of thing. But luckily, I've been able to move through those type of things in a successful way.
Yeah, I can't let you go without asking you about being ambidextrous. How helpful is that during either neurosurgery or painting?
So when you're listening to those lectures, if you do write notes, I say, are you right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Switch to your left hand. I couldn't stay awake in medical school. I just couldn't stay awake. The lectures. I don't know what it is. I moved too much, so sitting in a chair was not good for me. Yeah. And so lectures. And so back then we wrote. Yeah. And so I just said, one day, so one day I just said, I'm going to try to. I switched hands in medical school and started, and so then I could stay up because I was like, I'm concentrating so hard trying to write with the left hand. And then after a period of time, I became ambidextrous. And I'll tell you something, surgical speed to be able to use the tools, both hands really quickly, very dexterous. And in art, I switch off between, I do a lot of abstract painting with my left hand and regular painting with the right. If I did anything in life, it's become ambidextrous. That was the best tool and the hardest, by the way. It was harder to become ambidextrous than it was to become a brain surgeon. Can you believe that?
It should be its own specialty.
Yeah, we could. When you graduate, we could have like an ambidextrous fellowship.
Yeah. It should be like a new specialty, right? Or a new fellowship in surgeries, ambidextrous.
Right. Unfortunately, the tools are made for right-handed, the needle holder, and so you have to ask the scrub tech load for the left hand, and so a little bit, it's a little bit the scissors, right? Yeah. The scissors are right-handed, so a little bit different, but it's the best thing I did. I think that helped my creativity a lot. I think that solved my creativity. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And, we always say that time is brain, and it's like, in hindsight, you are an extender of people's time. So the work you do as a neurosurgeon, I mean, I could never imagine how stressful it could be. I mean, people's lives and the potential extension of it is literally in your hands in a very small fraction of measurements, right? How do you decompress out of work after a long day or just a stressful and tiring day, other than the painting that I know that you do for passion?
Well, when you're in surgery, every move you make and every breath that you take in the OR, you're thinking about that patient. It's you just are, and you are so focused and hoping that your best that day is enough. You're hoping, but coming out of the OR, when you realize that the surgery went well and you're closing, when I say closing, you're stitching the wound closed, you're putting the dressing on. I had several bad habits, which were going to the vending machines and eating candy. That's terrible.
You deserve it.
That was a really bad habit. That was terrible. And I wrote about that too, because everybody knew about it in the hospital. So, but I grew out of that. And I think art. I think just thinking about what I've gone through and how I can conceptualize that on a two-dimensional surface helped me more than anything else. It kind of allowed me to figure out a way through that stress. And I think that's important for everybody. Going to a field of medicine, like medicine or any high stress field, is figuring out a way that you can take your career with you and kind of figure out how you can live with it and in a meaningful and smooth way. Because if you don't and you sort of just leave it there, the thoughts just adds up. And so, stressful situations are neurosurgery extremely stressful. There's no getting around that. Yeah, there's no getting around that. Yeah.
I can imagine. Dr. Ko, it is such a privilege and an honor to have talked to you tonight and heard your journey and all of your funny stories. Again, thank you so much for spending today to speak to me today. I just had this revitalized passion in me to give my best and my all for patients and my future patients. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for having me. It's been so much fun, and you only get funny stories when you get to be as old as I am.
I am ready.
Please keep in touch, and I want to know what happens to you. Okay?
Yes, Doc. Thank you so much. Have a good day there.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.